Alright, g'day IB psychologists. One of the most common questions I get asked is how do I study for the IB psychology exams? Unfortunately, it's one of the most difficult questions to answer, but in this video, I'm going to explain, we're going to focus on the short answer questions and I explain 7 simple steps you can follow when you prepare for paper 1. Alright, let's go. Alright, so the very first step in studying for paper 1 in IB psychology, you need to list the topics. Now, in the IB psychology guide, they've got topics and content. I just call them topics, it's easier, right? So, for example, one of the topics is the brain and behavior, and then a bunch of content beneath that is things like neuroplasticity, localization, techniques to study the brain. I'm just going to call those things topics to make it easier. So, for all 3 approaches, the biological, cognitive, and socio-cultural, there's a list of topics that you need to know because these could be the basis of the exam questions. And so what I would suggest is take 1 page for biological, 1 for cognitive, 1 for social cultural, and then go through the guide or your textbook or whatever materials you've got, the blog, this YouTube video, YouTube channel, and make a list of all the possible topics that might be in an SAQ question. Now remember, we're just focusing on the short answer questions because, as I've explained in another video, they're the secret to getting a 7. Now, the reason you need to know the topics is because these are what the questions are based on. Those topics are going to appear in the exam question. Also remember, in paper 1, for the short answer questions, you have 1 from the biological, 1 from the cognitive, 1 from the social cultural. There is no choice, so you've got to write 3 SAQs. That's why you need to know all of the topics from all 3 approaches. So, step 1 in studying for IB psychology, the paper 1, is make a list of the topics in each of the 3 approaches. Okay, now step 2 in preparing for paper 1 is find one example for each topic. So, for example, one of the topics is techniques to study the brain. Find 1 example. I recommend fMRI or MRI. For hormones, find 1 hormone. For the multi-store model, working memory model, any of those topics that are theories or models, dual process, social identity, social cognitive, working memory, multi-store model, any of those that are theories or models, you don't have to worry about this step actually because those theories and models are the example for the topic. But other factors like emotion and cognition, find an example of how emotion affects the cognitive process. Reconstructive memory, find an example that demonstrates reconstructive memory. The biological approach, genes, find an example of a gene that influences behavior, and so on and so on. Okay, so once you've got all the topics, you must find 1 example, 1 relevant example for each topic. That's step 2. Okay, now step 3, after you've got the topics and the examples, is now you need to find the study. Okay. Okay, so you need to try to find 1 study per relevant topic. So if you are talking about techniques to study the brain and you're on fMRI, then you need to find a study that uses fMRI. Emotion and cognition, let's say you're looking at the effect of fear and memory, then you need to find a study that supports that. Same thing, so for the topic, so the working memory model, find a study that supports that. Multi-store model, schema theory, social identity theory. All of the topics you need to have 1 study per topic. Now again, I still recommend trying to lay this out in your overall notes, 1 page per approach. So you've got, now in your notes, you should have the biological approach, all the topics, you should have next to that the example, and then next to that you should have the topic. Now I'll just take the time here to give a little plug for the revision book. That comes with the 10-page workbook that has all this laid out for you so you can easily fill in the notes. So if you've got our revision book already, you should have that, the copy of that digital workbook. But it's pretty easy to make yourself, and in fact making these resources and making the notes by yourself is a far better and it's a more effective way to revise than actually just being given it by someone else. Okay, coming up, step 4. Okay, so step 4 is to write 1 key term and definition for each topic. All right, so again, so for the topic or the example, you want to find 1 key term per topic that you're gonna master the definition of that term. Sometimes the key term you're going to choose is actually the topic itself. So for example, localization of function, neuroplasticity, reconstructive memory, those are the actual names of the topics, and they're the key terms you really want to be able to define in your short answer question. It shows that you know what they are. Other topics, like for example hormone, well, you might not choose that as your key term that you want to be able to define in your answer, but maybe you'll choose the specific hormone you're going to write about, like cortisol or testosterone. Similarly, for something like working memory model, you can't define a model in one sentence, I don't think. So perhaps working memory as the concept is the term that you're going to define. Now, showing a definition of a key term is a really good way of showing knowledge. And if you can master a one-sentence clear definition of one key term per topic, it'll score you easy marks by showing your knowledge. And yeah, so now I recommend writing some flashcards here. I like hard copy myself, and in fact I've created a series of hard copy flashcards, and hopefully they're going to be available soon on the store. We're going to try really hard to get them available for the November exam session this year, so our Australian and other Southern Hemisphere students can use them. So just check out the store regularly to see when they get uploaded up there. Anyway, that is step 4. Coming up, step 5. Alright, so this has actually worked out quite well, because I would say if you're aiming for an IB4, and there's nothing wrong with that, that's a passing grade, that could be your goal. If you're aiming for an IB4, you can shut off this video now. I think this is what you need to be able to do to get an IB4. You might even squeeze by with a 5 in paper 1 for the short answer questions. If you have the exam question comes up, you've got a relevant topic, a relevant example, you've got a relevant study, and you can summarize that in a bit of detail, and you can define a key term. This is putting you on track for an IB4. You do it really well, maybe a 5. If you're aiming for a 5 or a higher, then we need to keep going in the steps. So step 5, I would construct a key question for every topic. So this is getting deeper, going beyond the superficial knowledge of the topic and going deeper into understanding the key concept. Now, ideally, the IB Psychology Guide would give us these key questions, or they'd give us the concepts that we need. And in some topics, it's really clear and it's really easy. And it's actually written in the guide so we can sort of figure it out. Other times, it's not so easy. And so I recommend doing this yourself. Now, again, I'll give my revision book a little plug here. I've done this all for you in the revision book as well. But again, actually, it's better for you to do it by yourself. Also, I think in the exam question banks, you can check them out there. And I might try to just make some blog posts that have overviews of each of the approaches with these key questions. Because like I said, some it's really easy, some it's tricky. The biological approach largely is pretty simple. Genes, hormones, neurotransmitters, agonists, antagonists. You can just ask, how does X affect behavior? How do hormones affect behavior? How do neurotransmitters affect behavior? How do genes affect behavior? Right? Pretty straightforward. Other concepts in there is a little bit trickier, like twin and kinship studies. Would say, well, how and why they used to study human behavior. That would be the key question there. Things like social identity theory, social cognitive theory, they're a little bit trickier as well. Social identity theory, a key question might be something like, how does SIT explain intergroup conflict like prejudice and discrimination? So you can see to come up with these by yourself can be a little bit tricky, and this is where I'd really recommend you to ask your teacher for some help here if you're not sure, but give it your best go. So try to write a key question for each of these topics. One question per topic that you could answer in about 3 to 5 sentences and around about 100 words. Okay, now if you can do this, you're going beyond just superficial knowledge and into deep understanding, and that's what you need to get top marks. Alright, so we keep going on track here. I'd say that's for an IB5. Now if you want an IB6, you need step 6, and I would say answer your key question. So you should now be able to construct it, right? How does social identity theory explain prejudice and discrimination? Fantastic. Now, the key to getting a 6 or even an IB7 is to be able to answer that key question. Now, this is what most, I would say, around about 90% of the short answer questions in IB Psychology miss out this crucial step in their answers. Most of the focus is on the study and on defining a key term. There's very little attention paid actually explaining the topic. We put all our emphasis in IB Psych on the studies, but really, in order to get top marks, you need to show not only the studies, but actually you have the conceptual understanding. You can explain behavior. You can explain behavior from a biological approach. You can explain important concepts in the cognitive approach. You can explain behavior by looking at how our social and cultural backgrounds influence our behavior. And that's not just about summarizing studies. The studies are the supporting evidence. What comes first is really these explanations. Now, I put them down the bottom here, though, because actually, like I said, if you're aiming for a 5, this is enough. But if you're aiming for those elusive 6 or 7s, and remember, only about 3 to 5% of IB Psychology students get a 7. I think that should be much higher, but I think that number's so low because there's not enough attention paid to this area here. So you need to be able to answer your key question. That's the secret. And again, 3 to 5 sentences, like one good paragraph, maybe about 100 words or so, not too much more. That should be enough here. Okay, now we get to the our final step 7, and this is if you're really aiming for a 7, you're super motivated. Now, if you're watching this the day before the exam, sorry, you're not going to have enough time to do this. Hopefully you're watching this, I would say at least 3 months, maybe, and before your exams, possibly a month, but that's going to be a little bit pushing it. Step number 7, I would say, would be to rewrite your notes. Now again, we're only looking here at the short answer questions because these are the compulsory questions that you don't have a choice with, but these are going to lay the foundation for you then to choose one approach to focus on the essays. And in another blog post and another video, I'll explain how you can take this foundation and then just add to it a little bit to build on your essay preparation for section B in paper 1. But I would suggest now taking your notes and rewriting them. And we can see here, this is where my fancy new whiteboard. Thanks, Bruce. Shout out to Bruce here who built this for me. I wanted a bigger whiteboard, a bigger chalkboard, I should say, so I can make my videos. I hope it's helpful. Maybe you can leave some feedback in the comments, but I don't really care what you write. I like it. But now, step 7, you're going to rewrite your notes. And so I think in this order, it might be a little bit disjointed. So I would recommend, actually, now that you've got this as your rough notes, you want to make some really good, clear revision notes. So I would go step 1, right? Put the topic, right? So, and I would do 1 page per topic. Now, again, this is going to take, there's about 30 odd topics in paper 1, so this might be about 30 odd pages, but I think it's going to be nice and neat. Or if you're doing it on a Word doc, maybe you can have tables if you're doing it digitally. But I would have the topic at the top of the page, right? The second thing I would then have, write the key question that you're trying to answer for that topic, right? Then begin with the key term and the definition. Now, instead of starting with the study, I would actually put this first, right? The answer. Now, if you've read my other blog posts or you've looked at my other videos, you'll see this is what I call the central argument. And in fact, this is what all essays and short answer questions should have. But like I said, most students miss this out. You need to have, let me just fix my chalk. You need to have a central argument in your short answer question. All the questions are designed for you to try to construct some sort of argument. So that's why I would put that here, the answer to your key question. Right, from this, now you have the study. And the study and the answer should be consistent here. And think about this is just transferable skills here. You're constructing or putting forward an argument, and then here is your supporting evidence. And you're doing this across all your subjects probably, right? You know, I'm sure definitely in your English subjects, you have to construct some sort of argument and support it with evidence. Then you have your study. And in fact, voila, that's pretty much it. Did I miss anything? Topic, key question, the key term and the definition, the answer, and then the study, voila. There's your IB7. And in fact, I'll put a link in the description to another video where I explain the 7 steps to writing a perfect SAQ. But if you do this, you're on board. So, in summary, how do you study for IB Psychology Paper 1? The first step is to prepare for the SAQs, biological, cognitive, social, cultural. And then here are the 7 steps. This is all written down in the blog post as well that I'll put a link in the description so you can check that out. But now you can see it's not fast. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? And it's not a quick fix. But if you're aiming for top marks, there you have it. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Coming up next, I will make a video on how to do this, or how to add to this for the essays. Cheers, thanks, and good luck.